Now I will insert an urgent notice for you. Recently, there have been a number of accidental deaths of children in our county, which has attracted widespread attention from all walks of life. After the incident, the police took prompt action and launched a series of detailed on-site investigations, including list inspection, video data retrieval. After in-depth investigation, no traces of fighting were found at the scene. At the same time, domestic violence, school bullying, and conflicts between classmates were ruled out, and it was preliminarily determined that these tragedies were all accidents.
In 2017, my family still lived in a small county in southern Yunnan. I was in the 4th grade of primary school at the time, and I was always surrounded by a few good friends who accompanied me, which could be said to be inseparable. For convenience, we called them Xiao A, Xiao B, Xiao C, Xiao D, Xiao E, and Xiao G. Among them, Xiao A, Xiao B, and Xiao C were my childhood friends who grew up together, while Xiao Yi and Xiao Ji were my primary school classmates. One weekend, a few of our good friends made an appointment to visit a distant grandmother's house in my country. At that time, my grandmother had passed away, and there was no one in the family, so the house in his house was empty. Usually, this house is taken care of by my father, so my father drove us there. It was already noon when we arrived. Grandma's house was in a very old village. The houses there were still wooden stilts. The first floor was supported by a few pillars, which were used to store sundries and living wood. The second floor was where people lived, because this design could not only avoid the moisture and cold on the ground, but also prevent the infestation of snakes and insects and tree ants. Grandma's house had a large yard with a huge ceramic basin on the side of the yard. The basin was really big enough to fit all 7 of our little friends. After my dad parked the car, my friends and I played hide-and-seek in the yard. We lost track of the time and looked up to see that it was dark, but everyone had a great time and no one wanted to leave. So my dad made some simple food at Grandma's house. After filling our stomachs, we were ready to spend the night in Grandma's old house tonight. There were 2 bedrooms on the 2nd floor. My dad slept in the small one, and the 7 of us were crowded into the other large bedroom. There were 2 large wooden beds in the room. It just so happened that we could sleep in one bed for every 3 people. So in the middle of the night, I was woken up by a burst of urine, sat up and looked, and found that Xiao A, who was sleeping next to me, was gone, and everyone else was sleeping soundly. I thought that Xiao A might have gone to the toilet, so I also went downstairs and walked to the yard. As soon as I got to the toilet door, I skimmed the big ceramic basin from the corner of my eye, and there was a black shadow next to it. I thought it was Xiao A, so I shouted, but the black shadow ran away in a swoosh. I was also confused at the time, and I didn't think much about it. After going to the toilet, I went back to the house to sleep. The next morning, we were awakened by Xiao B's screams, and we quickly ran out. As soon as he saw us, he hid behind us, and then said in horror, "Xiao He, he died in the ceramic basin." At that time, we were all frightened and couldn't believe what was happening in front of us. That day, Xiao A's parents came, but they didn't say anything, just left with a sad face holding Xiao A's body. When the others left one after another, I noticed that the bracelet my parents asked for me was broken. A week later, the news of Xiao B's death came. Hearing the news, my heart sank violently. I rushed to Xiao B's house with Xiao C, Xiao D, Xiao E, and Xiao G. Xiao B's parents told us with sadness that he had jumped out of the window that night. Hearing this shocking news, we all felt a tingle in our scalps, and a wave of meaning came to our hearts, as if the next bad luck would befall us. After we came out of Xiao B's house, we got together to discuss what to do next. Little C suggested that we go our separate ways in the future, don't contact again, and don't meet again. I'm really scared. If something happens to me, what will my family do? Then I comforted them and said, there are no such things in this world. A week later, Xiao C also passed away. He was found at the door of his house hanging on the beam of the living room, with indescribable horror on his face, as if he had seen something very scary. The rest of the friends were also more panicked, and finally decided not to contact again in the future. And I always felt that things were not that simple, and since then, we have lost contact. One night I had a dream. In my dream, I saw Xiao A, Xiao B, and Xiao C. They repeatedly talked about being sure to enjoy themselves for an hour. Don't get close to him. Don't get close. Be careful of the distance. Don't get close to him. You must rely on yourself. I suddenly woke up from the dream. I was completely sleepy and could only brush my phone to pass the time. Suddenly, I heard a rush of footsteps outside the door. I held my breath nervously. It was my parents who pushed the door and came in. Quickly, this relieved me, but what were they doing in my room in the middle of the night? My mother touched my face to see that I slept soundly, and then they left. At breakfast the next day, my mother told me that my little brother had died last night, which was a bolt from the blue for me, and now it was just me, my little aunt, and the little chicken. I decided to take the initiative to find them. I was going to look for Xiao Yi first, and then Xiao Ji. When I came to Xiao Yi's door, I found that the door was open and there was a sound of struggle. I thought Xiao Yi was in danger, so I opened the door and rushed in. As soon as I entered the house, I saw a scene that shocked me. I saw Chicken wiping his throat directly with a knife. At this time, Xiao Ji turned around and found me, and rushed towards me with a knife. At this critical moment, I actually grabbed his knife and subdued him. I don't know where the courage came from at that moment. I once asked my parents about this, but they never talked about it. Now we have moved to another city and started a new life, but every time I think about it, it always creeps me out. Later, my dad said that he went back to the village where my grandmother lived, but he found that the ceramic pot in the yard had mysteriously disappeared, and no one knew how he disappeared.